I'll be sharing about the version of the 12-step programs that has to do with food. So it could be under or overeaters, it could be compulsive eating, binge eating, um, restrictive eating. And so there's a chapters book called The Big Book. It's like based on the Alcoholics Anonymous program. It's an anonymous program, which means it doesn't change depending on who you are. There's 12 steps, and so there's a Overeaters Anonymous step book. It's called 12-12, 12 out of 12 kind of, and I wrote from there, and also from the AA book. And so I'll start. So basically there's 12 steps and 12 and there's also chapters in the big book, so they match. So first of all, I'll just start from the beginning. Step 1. This is material inspired from the book. So first of all, it's no one's fault. There's no need to blame myself for others. It's not an issue of willpower. It's called a physical, emotional, spiritual disease. The abnormal tendencies will persist despite the work at facing life accumulated in abstinence. If I could just get to the perfect weight, for example, that's what people think, life would be perfect, and that haunted me for years. When I found myself thinner, fitter weight, life was still unbearable, and I used drugs and alcohol to cope instead, which endangered my life, let alone made it unmanageable. Blaming those around us or our relationships for our unhappiness or breakdowns is a childish self-centeredness. When we try to control others manipulatively or by force, we hurt those we love. And we wound up, when we did that, demoralized when we tried to control ourselves. Not learning from mistakes is to not grow up. And when we cling to our habitual ways of thinking and acting as if we know what's best for us when they're dysfunctional, that's what led us to unhappiness and unhealthiness. We are free to change and to learn. We are teachable. Step 2. So then the Alcoholics Anonymous book, or the Anonymous book, these are some notes from there. Fair weather friends are gone during the storms, and when it's no longer a luxury but a necessity is when we start to do the work. The roots will grasp at new soil, and the scales of pride and prejudice fall from our eyes. Common sense can become uncommon, and instead of praying for ourselves, we could pray for usefulness to others, which is like the destruction of self-centeredness. When we enter a new relationship with our Creator, all we need to do is believe in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things, and we can see others going through all the same troubles and miseries on our journey. Okay, now this is part 2. When we eat past fullness, past the being sick of eating, and when we isolate ourselves to eat, it's damaging relationships and denying ourselves a full social life, and our self-esteem goes down when in this case, our weight goes up. At times, existential crisis to be meaninglessly eating and shitting can feel, or eating and pooping, I'm sorry for the crudeness, I'm so sorry. Feels more like life wasn't very livable or worthwhile, and in overweightness, we get plenty of unsolicited advice, comments, and opinions. And instead of bringing comfort, the overeating backfires. The more we eat, the more we suffered, yet we continued. True insanity could be seen in trying to get comfort in the excess food long after it caused misery, spending money we don't have on specific impulse cravings, confining compulsive eating to when we're alone. It didn't actually mean the rest of our lives were balanced. And we can even yell, be possessive, jealous, and fear, anxiety, regularly limiting our own social lives, drawing ourselves pressed into a hiding space. And even we could smile and agree when we really want to say no, unable to stand up for ourselves in an abusive relationships. We kind of feel we deserve it, and we focus on others' faults, thinking for hours about what they should do to solve their problem while not solving our own problems. We might overact to the slightest provocation while ignoring real issues, and it's kind of like a black and white world, wild then depressed. We want it all. We want it to be the best, fixed, saved, effortlessly perfect, and when we take on a new programming, a self-programming, because the old program, the old habits, the old way of being is not working. It's because being a member of that is being human. We're going to fail ourselves at times. And that's why having a higher power, having Hashem, God, creator, source, is most reliable. When we learn to ask for help and letting God speak through our fellows, and when we're willing to start fresh with a higher power, it's a humbling, evolving relationship. And I'll go to the big book section on this, or the anonymous book. What brings us together is joy of escape, having shared in a common peril. Even more, we discovered a common solution we can agree on a way out. Others' perceptions, ignorance, misunderstanding, it's theirs. When we're sensible and well-balanced in areas other than our addictions, or like when we're selfish and dishonest, is about getting and using it precisely when some important decision must be made or some engagement is kept, and really it's all about a problem in our mind. We have to pick up that first one. Philosophy of beating ourselves up in the head with a hammer so we can't feel the headache is like we're unable at certain times to bring it into our consciousness with sufficient force, the memory of the suffering and humiliation. Maybe it was a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, and when we touch a stone claiming it won't burn me, claiming it won't burn me this time around, not even thinking, versus our deep and effective spiritual experiences, which have revolutionized our attitude to life and people, God, the universe. And we do this because we honestly wanted to, and we're willing to make kind of like an inventory. And a vital spiritual experience is not the same thing as religious convictions. It's about a design for living, the living spirit, versus a religion. And, we got to do this we got to seek escape with the desperation of a drowning man. Okay, I'm going to do number 3 now. From the specifically regarding food, and then, or like what it's like to have a process, or like an addiction, and then I'll go back to the book that talks more about like in general. Accepting help without any reservation from Hashem, from our Creator, from God, is how we choose to follow spiritual guidance in making every decision, and letting go of preconceived notions of what's right for us, and learning to sustainably abstain during any times, good times, bad times, from what isn't good for us, and even identifying which foods or behaviors trigger our compulsivity. We can experience knowledge, help, that's augmented by our source of internal wisdom that grows as we recover from compulsion instead of developing a relationship with our higher power. It's like an inner resource, intuition. We place our will, our life, our intuition to God. It's a direct way God talks to our mind or our heart. It's like prayer, meditation. We work these steps. Right now I'm up to 3. I haven't been naming the steps because I don't want this to be a 12-step thing. I want it to be really about the process of recovery and substance use. So when we do the work, when we take steps in the right direction, it helps us remove our problems and the interferences made of self-will. And what's always available to us is God, as long as we do the work. And we can ask God for the willingness and the ability to live within the appropriate guidelines for us with whatever tools, which is like to have a plan of how we're going to, for example, eat, to read literature that feeds our mind, to do writing, meetings, like groups. In Yiddish, we would call it a farbrengen, inspiring gathering, to do service, to use the phone, like to make calls or connect with people, to sponsorship. In this case, it doesn't mean money. It means like to take responsibility towards someone's recovery, like to have one who's responsible for us. In Yiddish, we call it a mashpia. In Hebrew, sorry. And of course, anonymous. What this means is that it's not meant for a specific type of person. It's meant for anyone. And this kind of all sort of is based on the fundamental the fundamental trusty truth that this too shall pass. That's the renewing our trust in our higher power, which is the power that created us, that has more power than us, through a daily commitment. It's called a step 3 daily commitment, a daily commitment. As we improve, we will earnestly seek to learn God's will for ourselves, act accordingly instead of doing what we feel like or what we think we can get away with. And we give up fear and indecision, knowing that through sincerity we will receive the knowledge of the best course of life and the strength and desire to follow it, even when it seems difficult or uncomfortable. So instead of compulsion, we start to develop the relationship with God, with the divine. So what used to be a hunch or occasionally inspiration becomes a working part of the mind, like an exercised muscle. And there's a new reaction when we face a problem or decision. We pause to learn God's will instead of acting on impulse. And from the what's called the Big Book from Alcoholics Anonymous, these are some pieces. It's not about diagnosing others, but about diagnosing ourselves. And when we try to experiment with starting and abruptly stopping, seeing the powerlessness, there could be a long period of abstinence. It doesn't mean suddenly we can dabble in moderation. We can't have lurking beliefs that we're immune. So in other words, like if we want to see our powerlessness, we try to just stop randomly after we started, or we have to remember that we can't just have a little bit of something that triggers our compulsivity. When we're obsessed and compelled with creativity on how to still make it happen or use it, it's like an insanity. It's like addicted to jaywalking, which is like moving vehicles. It's like trying to cross the street in a dangerous way. Anyway, I hope that this was valuable. I have found a lot of wellness through the programs, and that's why I am sharing.